the folks, I mean, people not only on the channel tripping. I mean, Joe Biden tripping, Joe Biden trying to start a war. It's not like we don't have enough wars, but he trying to get more money to finance two wars. But folks living in the street, and we can't get people out the street, but we can finance two wars.
Good evening. Sorry for the delay, chocolate people. Welcome to the Chocolate Life Podcast. I'm your host, AJ Jones. And I'm just happy to be in front of you once again. And once again, we have Chaplain McKay with us.
What's up, AJ?
Man, Auntie, these folks are literally stuck on one word, Hamas. Like they're speaking on them as if they are the villains. And I'm like, y'all don't know what y'all are watching. Like, what are y'all?
Well, in a way, they are the villain because they struck first. But to actually make Hamas be all of Palestine and be every Palestinian is a disservice, and it's a false narrative.
Right.
They are a group of, as people call them, they call them terrorists. But you still have to ask the question. So how was Hamas financed? How did they come into being? Why everybody is just, focused on that one word? Where did they come from? Who financed them? Who's still financing them? That's the bigger question.
The folks that's killing them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we had this, I don't know if we had this conversation recently, but I think you and some of your cousins were talking about when guns were coming into Chicago, and the question had to be asked, well, where do young people get guns? And you have to ask, where does Hamas is a part of Gaza? Gaza is it's apartheid. So if you live in apartheid, how do you get all of these different things? That question has to be asked, and hopefully our audience will get to the point that they don't just listen to us, but they start doing their own homework and start being an advocate in their own communities with information that's not just information, but how do you empower your community?
Right.
Because we are losing our right to actually have conversations. We are. As humans,
Yes.
We're losing our rights because people talk about Russia, but the United States is no different than Russia.
And that's and there are a lot of people having a hard time having that conversation. Like just to say that in just in general conversation, just out in public, like folks will like double take and look at you weird. And then when you explain it to them, it's almost like, okay, what he's saying is true, but
it's kind of sad that we have to explain that to people, and not enough of us understand international anything,
global policy.
Not enough of us. What am I trying to say? Want to be engaged. How about that? Just want to be engaged in civility. And how do we have conversations with people who don't look like us, don't think like us, didn't have our same experience, but how do we actually have conversation? We talk about quote unquote people, ancient people, and I've done enough studies to tell anybody, ancient people had more civility than these people or these things who are masquerading as humans have now.
Right. And they're still using the same old infinity age year playbook.
Well, I mean, it's sad and it's pathetic, and I'm looking at half of the things that's going on. The mass media, which are all owned by white capital. I don't care what country you're from, unless you're from India, and then it's not white capital, but then you got the Brahmins, so you still got white capital because it is the political structure. And if you think you more than the next person, then you have a white supremacist mindset, because somewhere in your psyche you demean people, or you actually remove their humanity from them. That's
Yeah.
that's 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 pathetic, but we are seeing this all around. And imagine if, let's take the crisis, the Ukraine crisis versus Russia. Russia said Ukraine belonged to them. However, the United States is saying, quote unquote, Ukraine has the right to defend themselves because they are independent. Okay? I'm not even getting into who struck who first. Just the idea, okay? Using that same analogy on Palestine and the Israelis. So the Palestinians don't have a right
To
to
defend
exist
themselves.
on their own land that is theirs. And the Israelis decide that I want this, so I'm going to take it. So in this case, in Israel being Russia,
Yes, absolutely.
but somehow we transpose in Ukraine, who has neo-Nazi, a whole Assad, the whole unit are neo-Nazis, but somehow we're on. This is so messed up on so many different levels. You on the side of neo-Nazis because we're so ignorant with all the situations.
Wait a minute.
However, when it comes to the Israeli Palestinian situation, people can't even tell you, how the country got started or how the nation got started, whatever they want to call themselves. The people who came from Eastern Europe, they decided to go over there and decided to move these people off their land with the help of Britain and now the United States. Now, if people want to go back to quote unquote the Bible stuff, then I got another one for you. These people who started Israel were atheists. So how do you get to the point that you're saying this is quote unquote a God's plan? Based on what? They're atheists. And that behavior has continued to manifest. And now you have one voice in the United States. If you're not on the side of Israel, then you really don't have a voice. I mean, can't both of those groups be wrong? Since, let me see, where is the report? Since money to Hamas is part of the strategy to keep the Palestinians divided. That's what Netanyahu said in March, on March 12th, 2019. That was in the Jerusalem Post. Now, if somebody want to, fact check me, go look at the Jerusalem Post on March 12th, 2019. So that was isn't that the policy that people talk about in the United States, divide and conquer? So you are financing a group of, as they call them, I'm not calling them anything but people who have been set up, kind of like Boko Haram. They have been set up to kill their own people or to create havoc. So the power structure can destroy you whenever they choose to.
Okay, so I don't know. Just as you were talking, something told me to look at a world map and look at where Israel is and look to see how far Russia is from Israel. And
but it's not that far.
Yes, that's what's getting me. And I was like, okay, so what do Russia and Israel have in common?
Well, most of the Jews that's over there come from Russia.
Okay, that part. And I was
But
watching.
that idea and concept came from and this is part of what our audience need to start doing before, so they can educate wherever they are in this universe, the cocoa verse, chocolate verse,
you're
wherever
using
they
the
are.
you're
I
using
mean,
the terminology.
serious. Well, seriously, because we gotta become our own brigade using military language. We gotta become our own brigade, but we gotta be knowledgeable about what we're talking about, so
Right.
we can be able to give legitimacy to the conversation, not just have quote unquote a podcast following, so everybody can just have a good time hanging out. And this person said this. This is, this is dope. I can do this on TikTok because somebody. We are in World War III, and these spiritual entities under the guise of white supremacy, because it's a spirit. They are very hateful people, and their only goal is for power by domination and destruction and war. They have no respect for humanity unless they decide if you're human. They have no respect for the land unless they decide it needs to be theirs. That's the same thing the United States did with black people in the United States. Some of the black people who used to be called Indians, but now they've been reduced to quote unquote calling them black people, or what they used to call Negroes or coloreds. All of those are words that Europeans put on a group of people. These people didn't call themselves none of that. They didn't even call themselves Indians.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to say all the Aboriginal people who had melanin in their skin have been invaded by people who came out of caves and decided, well, if I want this, I'm going to take it.
The entitlement.
Yes, the entitlement. So the Palestinians right now are the Negroes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, should I say the triggers? They are the triggers over there in their own land that they can't even actually call their own, because the colonizers have come over there and they use, the same way they did over here. They use this religious language because none of these supposedly people, even who came over to America, the first people came over here were starving and dying. They did not come over here to bring anything that has to do with God to people. That's what I mean when I say we have to do more. We have to do more going back to the root. And right now, since they're, killing each other over in the Middle East, because we can talk all day about America and their hypocrisy. I think that's the reason they can't call Israel on their hand, because that means then they have to be called on their hand over here.
Yes.
I use the example, the Tulsa massacre. Tulsa got a bomb dropped on them long before the Israelis dropped the bomb on the Palestinians. And we have, and I'll say, rest in power to, they call him Uncle Red, who was one of the youngest of the seniors who are still alive. He was 102 and he died last Monday.
Yeah.
And nothing has changed. They still have not got reparation, just like no black people in the United States have got reparation, but specifically Tulsa. And now Tulsa seek to have a movie by Martin, whatever that man's name, I can't pronounce his name.
Martin Scorsese?
Yes, him. He has a 3.5-hour movie that's coming out. That's supposed to be about the Osage Nation. But it's sad when you are a footnote in your own story. Because really it's about the Osage Nation, but it really isn't. It's about the FBI, and the story centers around. Remember, this is a movie. It's kind of like Titanic. Titanic didn't center around all of the elitism and how they actually allowed all the people who drowned were the poor people who were in the bottom of the ship. They made it into a fantastic love story about this so-called poor person who falls in love with rich woman. And it's a whole lot even for European or the European mindset to fall in love with a concept or an idea of a fantasy than to tell the truth. Because the FBI and the government of Oklahoma kill the Osage people for their oil. That's the same thing they're doing all over the world. They've always done. They kill
That's
people.
that new movie that's out right now.
Yes, they kill people for their resources. Then, like I said, I won't watch that movie. That's one of the movies that's in the, one of the books for people to look, actually get for themselves. But you're footnoting your own story. That's why it's important that we learn how to tell our own stories. Europeans have tried to tell our stories too long, and far too long we've allowed them to try to do that, and they've been horrible. Because the only thing they do is talk about, they kind of like the guy over in the Ukraine right now. He's been out of shape because the attention is taken off of him.
You talking about Zelensky?
Yes. I mean, he's a petulant child. How you running the country, but he has the same mentality as Donald Trump. And the word in the YouTube street is he does not plan to have an election. So how is it that all of these European people want to be dictators, but they somehow still have problems with the people on the continent? It's their land who want to run their land the way they want to, but they think they're supposed to be telling the people on the continent how to run their land and defend themselves. But the people who stole the land, the old Canaan that is now Palestine, who is now under the regime of the Israelis or the Jews, whatever they call themselves, they can do that, but nobody on the continent hold that right or that power to self-govern. I thought the whole continent had some autonomy. I didn't know they had to wait on Big Brother from Europe or Big Brother from the United States to tell them how to make moves. I don't know.
And and just like how you made the parallel with the with Tulsa. And it's almost like what's going on right now is kind of like a dry run of what the U.S. could be getting ready to do with us over here.
But I think that's the whole point. That's why I said we need to be getting our own strategies together. Our government has never been for us, will never be for us. We are the people who have been fighting this entity, this white supremacy mindset. We, the people who come out of the chattel slave, the idea of being the name they call Indians to be called Black, who were taken all of their rights, their lands and everything taken away, and even human casualty that was taken from off the continent and blended with the people in what you call the America. They still were Aboriginal people. I'm not getting into all of those names. I'm just not. I'm done with doing that. They were Aboriginal people. They came over here and actually learned to work together. They learned to live together. When the Spanish came over here in the 1500s, before the British, the indigenous people that they brought from the continent, that they brought from Europe, who were supposed to have been guiding their ships, they decided to go into the swampland over in what they call Florida. They decided to start cohabitating with the indigenous people here. So apparently these people had some type of infinity that they knew who their basic enemy were. Even if they didn't speak the same language.
Yeah.
And even if they did, then that does not tell you, that does not line up with how Europeans have told us the stories about melanated people have gone. because somehow they've told us these people couldn't speak the same language. Well, if you can't speak the language in the 1500s and you leave the Europeans who are trying to set up camp, calling themselves, the Spanish, and you go mingle with the people in the woody area, and you never are to be seen again, and you become a part of their community, then either something spiritual made a connection, or you learn how to communicate using signs or whatever else. But they never went back with these Europeans. So that says something about the nature of Aboriginals versus the nature of people who went through the Ice Age.
Yeah, it says a whole lot without saying a whole lot, because it's almost like, you know what, bro, I really don't trust you guys. I'm gonna come and chill with them. Don't wait up for me. I'm out. These guys know how to treat us. You guys are evil, and we're staying with these guys.
Well, I mean, but see, and I think the idea of seeing just black and white would be a false sense of history.
Yeah.
Southern Europe had a whole lot more melanin, even if they call themselves Spanish, even if they call themselves Portuguese, even if they were the Moors, who were actually had a trade route. I have to keep saying that.
Mm-hmm.
That trade route that the man called Columbus came on, it was the same trade route that the Albanians had already been using, because they were trading with this continent before the Europeans came over here. They had already come over here. Mansa Musa sent somebody over here. So one person came back, one person stayed. Well, I said one person, I mean their boats. So there is a lot of history that's missing from the total story of our history. They're telling their history. History, not our story.
Right. And it just continuously makes me think about my first semester in Dr. Miller's class. Like,
now who's Dr. Miller again?
Oh, he was the very first class I ever took in college. He was the professor that came in his dashiki, black jeans, and Jordan said, I'm going to learn that bullshit you learned K through 12, and I'm going to change your life. I was like, okay. That was him. That's who I'm always talking about.
Okay. Well, I mean, but half of the stuff that we've learned, that we've been indoctrinated, it's like right now, there's a campaign going on to indoctrinate people on how to feel about humanity. In other words, it's okay to kill a whole group of people. It's okay. Let me go back a second, because now I read a little bit more about, and I don't know if we talked about it last week, this young man who used to be a basketball player,
Amari Stoudemire,
and now he has been accepted into, I guess, the Jewish, tradition. In other words, the religious tradition. I don't know. But I saw a picture of him with a shawl on, prayer shawl on, and lighting candles. So what I'm saying is, apparently he has joined the tradition, the religious tradition, from a so-called nation that he don't understand started with atheists. But they brainwash the religious people. So the religious people, because remember, all these people were getting killed over in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they were trying to find a homeland. And they were trying to find a homeland everywhere. So this man has tied himself to something that actually hate him, because if he didn't know any, I guess because he was a basketball player and they paid him money. So he's being an Oprah Winfrey, or now he's being a Clarence Thomas, or now he's being a Kamala Harris or Barack Obama. That's the only way I can frame it so it makes sense. Because for him to think that the whole black community is supposed to be caping for the war that's going on, that half of us in this country have not even gone out of whatever state we're in, but we supposed to be standing up saying I'm for or against some particular group that's over in a place that people have no idea where it is, most of them. That makes no sense. But that's what happened when you become a part of the elite. So now he has become a very dark white man. He's kind of like the Ramaswamy guy.
Oh, I'm so sick of that name.
Well, but he is.
Sound like a really, really bad tasting sandwich.
Because he's
let me get that Ramaswamy.
He's disrespecting a whole group of people because they haven't said anything about the killing that happened in Israel. But at the same time, it's framed, most of these conversations are framed as if you're supposed to condemn Hamas. But at the same time, you say nothing about the Israeli defense people who just yesterday, and you don't hear a lot about that.
Oh, yeah, they killed the general.
Who just blew up a church. How about that? In Palestine, in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, they blew up a church, and they killed that general and his family.
Yeah.
The Hamas general and his family.
Well, but they trying real hard to start a war. Israel wants a war because, as I said, Israel behavior is no different than
the Donalds.
Well, I'm going to use the man they paint as a monster. Their behavior is no different than Vladimir Putin. Matter of fact, it's the same way. If I got the missiles, then I can make this happen. Because I got people to back me. But it's not going to turn out the way America and Europe think it is. Everybody going to go back to their own corners. And they're going to reevaluate. What's in it for them? These young people on the continent not getting in a fight to help any of these people. China are going to reevaluate. United States and China have been dancing around. They're going to find out what's in it for them. The people in the Middle East, as a matter of fact, Jordan has decided, at first Jordan and the nice king over there, said, Palestinians should accept whatever that accord was, like in 2000, whatever. Now he's changed his mind. He said it needs to go back to the 1967 line, which means that all those settlements, they need to come down. And if you're talking about Jordan's king, who is probably one of the nicer people who is from the area they call the Middle East, if he is saying this, just think about some of those hardline Sunnis and some of these people who are quote unquote Arabs, which people don't understand. All Arabs are not Muslims.
Right.
Just like all Israelis are not Jews.
Yep.
Let me say that again. All Arabs are not Muslims, and all Israelis are not Jews. So people who have no idea what they're calling themselves supporting, especially when they call themselves Christians, and don't know the history, of the fight where they put these people over here. They created, this is the creation of the Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
The Europeans, I'm just going to leave it at that. The Europeans, that king who's running around with somebody else's diamond in his crown. And these people over here, they created that monster and they continue to do it. And let's go a step further. The United States continue to try to reap havoc so they can continue to do wars. But this is the behavior that's always been with the colonizers. This is a colonizer behavior. When the Civil War was, it ended because they were losing money. Okay, let's just say that.
Yeah. And you know what?
Europeans have never been managers. They're barbarians by nature. They want to dominate everything, and that behavior has to stop, or the whole world gonna be destroyed because they half of this power, and I'm talking power, not people, half of this power that runs the world has no conscience or souls. It just like authority, power, and being ruling over everything.
And in a lot of ways, and that kind of led, I remember when you asked that question at the end of the podcast last week, you said, who gets to have power? And right now, Israel is saying, okay, we get to have this. We get to have the land. We get to rule over you. We get to kill you. We have the power.
Well, and not only that, I mean, the question still has to be asked. Let me see another article.
You can even put it into another. Who gets to be valued?
Well. I'm gonna look at both. I mean, everybody wants to run back to Hamas started this because they blew up XYZ. Well, if people would look at an article that was in another newspaper from Israel. So it's not like I'm lying about any of this. It's called Egypt Intelligence Official says Israel ignored repeated warnings of something big. So if they ignored repeated warning from another country, then their government, and if there is an Israeli listening, please pass this message on to your other Israeli citizens. Your government let you down. Your government allowed this to happen because your government has always wanted to have a reason to kill and displace the rest of the people who are not in Jordan, who are not in Lebanon, who are not in Syria, who are not in Egypt. Been wanting that, they go ahead for a long time, and now it has happened. I don't hear anybody asking, and this article came out on the 9th of October, and this is out of an Israeli paper, okay? So if Israeli paper is saying this, why aren't anybody else paper saying this? Or is it just blocked from communication by all of these so-called outlets here in the divided states?
I want to say, I don't want to say it's blocked, but it's almost like that information goes against the plans of the people it goes against the plan of the elites of the country who's trying to work their plan.
Well, it goes against the plans of can I add this, the elites of the world? Because this is a world domination. We got the United States trying to build a prison training camp down in what used to be Black people neighborhood. They're trying to displace them. And then you got so-called Black people who are allowing this to happen down in Atlanta. They're not just training the people in Atlanta. They plan to train people across the world. The audience may not be aware, or maybe they are because, it was national news. The young man who got killed in Memphis by the Black police, their chief of police trained with Mossad. Now, why would a police chief be training with Mossad? Think about that for a moment.
That is
that's why I say
good question. And this also goes back into discussions we were having probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where okay, what are these small towns doing with military equipment?
Yeah, well, they hold. I mean, but if you look at most of the research from any country, and I'm going to talk about the continent for a moment because a person kind of saddened me today when I was talking about the situation of their country. Well, their country, quote unquote, being a peacekeeper over in Haiti. Europeans they don't have any problem trying to kill all melanated people. That has always been the agenda.
Yeah.
Melanated people just don't understand that. And I don't care what country you're from. And you can be from East Asia. Everybody was melanated. Everybody had brown skin, not light skin. People had brown skin. The Khois and the Sands, the Khoisan, they have beautiful brown skin. And as they had to move farther and farther into the desert and into what we call the Caucasus areas, their skins lighten up. But we're talking about beautiful brown people. And the closer you are to the equator, even more beautiful brown people. But we don't even know our own history.
Yeah.
And point example, I asked this person if they knew the president of their country or if they knew somebody. And they said they knew this president. And I said, well, I got a message for them. He said, being over there in Haiti, please tell your president, don't let the United States use them because it's not going to work out well. Because the situation in Haiti, according to the people who took the money, the 28 people, they stated, not I'm stating it, they stated that the United States was behind it. So the United States is killing the president of Haiti, creating chaos, financing the very people they call thugs. But as long as they're doing what the United States want them to do, they're okay with that because Europeans love power. And if you got something they want, they plan to take it. United
They're not
States.
Gonna ask nicely.
No, that kind of evil is not. There is no such thing as nice. First of all, it's evil. It's nasty. It's hateful. So there's no such thing. Conniving it may do, but no.
Right.
And I asked this person if they knew about Patrice Lumumba, and they did not. Think about that for a moment. They're from the continent. They live their adult life on the continent, but they don't know the story about Patrice Lumumba. But somehow people are coming to America and trying to tell us that we're lazy. We don't work hard enough. You know, all of those very derogatory statements that are made about indigenous melanated people of this country.
Right.
The disrespect that's shown toward us. And they don't even know their own history on the continent, which is sad. And I know some of the people who might listen, yes, they know, but it's sad when you don't know and you're not even interested. You're not interested of a young man who was trying to get his country to be progressive, to move past colonization, and then his own people being paid by the CIA, according to records, and other entities, have him killed, and then his body cut up and put in a barrel. But you're not interested in that as an immigrant coming over here. But somehow you think you're supposed to tell people about this person you call Jesus. I take offense to that because Patrice Lumumba was a real person. We have records of him. We know he exists. I want one person to show me records that Jesus existed. I'll wait. Now, I can give people a lot of records to show that Jesus did not exist, but that's a story for another day.
Right.
I'm talking about how we're not even concerned about our own history, regardless if it's the history over here or the history over in another country. How are we not concerned about people, specifically melanated people, who trying to help everyday common people to move the needle, to be human and to be self-governed, to be self-sufficient? All of those things that Europeans say that they're bringing to different groups, when in essence, they're just bringing more colonization and imperialism to a society. Because the earth is a prison planet.
Oh yeah.
So for all these people saying they're trying to walk in Jesus, saying I'm a sojourn and I'm traveling, I'm moving through the prison. The planet is still a prison because you got certain people. We see that even from right now with the war efforts. The guys who are of Arab descent have been blocked from doing their programs on the so-called liberal station. Now, remember now, it's the liberals, as they call themselves, who talk about the conservatives. Okay.
And vice versa.
Well, but the conservatives they're never going to have all of those different people on there unless they badmouth, they shit on their own people, just like, the black people that go on the conservative and they punch down. They never have anything positive to say about black people, but you got black skin. So no, they don't mind by having that kind of voice. But supposedly on these liberal channels, they supposed to have everybody who is speaking for all of the different groups. But now the Arab people who thought they had their white card, mind you. See, everybody can get their white card when they get over there. Even Palestinians, let's don't leave them out. You can get your white card when you come to the U.S. But the U.S. will show you real quick, because this is a very hateful government, that they have no love for you either. They're going to show poor white people that. Because this is a very racist and a eugenics mindset.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. Like, a lot of people just in general are not seeing this. They're looking at it, oh, Hamas is picking on Israel. No, they're trying to write those people off their own land. Like, this is like you said, it's genocide. Like, it's
but it's also projection too, because you got our government and all of these talking heads saying Hamas trying to kill all the Israelis. How? Even if they think about that for a moment, even if they actually tried to have that kind of war, how, when you're talking about a surveillance state that have all kinds of weaponry and could just drop a bomb and kill all the people anyways. So how a ragtag group like Hamas, and I'm not disrespecting them for the power that they did when they actually carried out this particular incident. I'm not taking that from them. I'm not saying more power to them. So nobody who's listening to this won't want, because that's what people have gotten if they say anything that they are for the people trying to do things for themselves versus Hamas. They make everybody be Hamas, and then they just outright lie on people who are just saying, what do you expect people to do when they've been oppressed for all of these years? And their people been just killed in the street. And little children who have been just living in terror. They pretty much like the people in Tulsa. And I will keep it comparing for anybody in the United States who would like to try to throw that back in anybody's face. United States did that to a whole group of people here in America. And not just one, I'm just using them for an example. They've never gotten paid for it. But somehow we supposed to feel some kind of way about the organization who has the biggest military, all kinds of weaponry. Yes, I feel sad for the people who got screwed because they're a government, like our government screwed us. So that's the point I'm making. Israelis got screwed by their own government. They got bombed by Hamas, who is one of the groups who the Israeli government financed to get the weaponry to kill. They just didn't just kill their own people. They killed some of the Jewish people too. Mm-hmm. Kind of like this, the people they give the guns to in the United States, and they call them black thugs. Okay? Same mentality. They make you into the boogeyman, but they're the ones supplying you with the ammunition to kill your own people. So you become the terrorists, you become the thugs, you become the subhuman, you become the whole thing these hominins are, who are giving you the power to kill other humans so they can keep their hands clean. Make that make sense. That's all. Mm-hmm. Because even this lady, your audience may want to look up Golda Meir. Golda Meir was she was the first female prime minister. I probably think the only one too. But she had the audacity to say her words, "There are no Palestinian people." That's her words when they moved or went to Palestine in 1921. That's what this little wrinkled up lady said, who was, she's Ukrainian. How about that?
Oh, wow.
Well, that's the interesting thing when you start finding out the history of many of these people who have very interesting history. So when she was in Hungary, she was a problem. Her family was a problem for the Hungary government. But that didn't stop her from being racist, just like those people who are in Ukraine right now. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot to unpack. It's so many different pieces to this. So many different pieces. And speaking of who gets to have power of voice, a little boy. I don't know if you heard this story. A little boy in Chicago. Little Palestinian boy. That's how much hatred is in the world right now. Little Palestinian boy in Chicago got stabbed. Did you hear me? Got stabbed 26 times. He was 6. How do you stab a child 26 times? He doesn't have enough body to stab that many times. And it was his mother's landlord.
Goodness gracious.
But this is how much hatred is just being allowed to run amok. And if they don't have to talk about it, they give you one storyline and they're done. Because this power structure is trying hard to make sure it keeps the power. And that's not going to happen. It's just not. The United States is not going to continue its power. Right now, Joe Biden is trying to have 2 wars. Joe Biden blew up, okay? Joe Biden blew up the Nord Stream. Is it called Nord Stream? the pipeline that Russia runs their gas, and Seymour Hersh, who is a journalist, and I think the name in Hirsch, look that up. In Hirsch, Jewish.
I'm going to assume yes.
Okay,
That's
I'm
very,
using
very
that because
common.
everything. You say something, everybody think that if you say certain thing that you hate certain people. Seymour Hersh, journalist. He the one who
Hirsch.
I think so. He's been a journalist ever since the Vietnam War. He the one uh, 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 bust the United States out about that war, and then he got blackballed. But it's okay to get blackballed if you got resources to keep going, which Seymour Hersh has been doing. But he also broke the story about the pipeline, and they, who gets to have voice? This power structure. They block this man. This man is an independent journalist. Okay. And I was watching a podcast where this person came into a national journalist meeting. I want to say it was Chicago. I may have my place wrong. But he came into a journalist meeting, and he turned it out before the security took him out, because he asked the editors, and we talking about editors like people for the Washington Post, for the New York Times, for the New Yorker, all of these different famous elite newspaper. He asked them, since you're here, why don't you have Seymour Hersh here to defend himself? And he just went off on them. But this is where we are. We have the same behavior that people are, and I'm going to keep saying it. We got the same behavior that people are talking about Vladimir Putin is doing with his people. We have the same fascism that's happening right now in the United States, and it's called Joe Biden and his people. Since he's the president, I just have to give it to him. Joe Biden, and he said it, but people missed it because they don't pay this man any attention. But he's just as cold and calculated as they wanted to say Donald Trump was. Donald Trump is an idiot, but Donald Trump did not blow up the Russian pipeline. Joe Biden did. Right. Rather, correction. Joe Biden had the people from Norway to blow up the pipeline. Nord Stream number 2. So all of this is not going to end well, but if we are, as a group of people who are listening to this broadcast, are to make an impact on just regular everyday people, we have to do some things different. First of all, we have to become educated. As I've told AJ, my job for coming on these podcasts is to start educating, and hopefully you guys will educate the group of people wherever you are, in whatever country you are, and see what group of people want to be educated, want to become savvy enough that we form our own underground railroad, because that's how we're going to make it work. We're not going to make it work by, quote unquote, getting 1 million subscribers and everybody just want to just sit back and be on the internet. That's not how this works. We have to do some things to educate ourselves so we can stop following these so-called presidents of these countries, specifically that have been European ran or Eurocentric. And when I say Eurocentric, they're ran by people that's in Canada and the United States, or in some of these countries in South America, who premise have always been a white supremacy mindset. And when I say that, somehow certain people get to be on the bottom their whole existence. That means everybody in their family. Like right now, Palestine, which is the West Bank, and Gaza is just a strip of land. Okay? But most of the people, half of the people, and when you say that, people somehow are so stupid they don't understand that if the adults are having children and if their parents are getting killed, regardless of how many people, you got more children than you do adults. That makes more sense. If you got people who are having children, you always going to be outnumbered by children. But most of the people in the Gaza Strip, the average age was under 20.
Goodness gracious.
But somehow people can't equate that to they don't even have the power to destroy the government that they are they're prisoners to in the Gaza Strip, because it's a small area with had 2 million people. That's a small area of 25 miles long to have 2 million people. So they talking about cages. These people are in literally open air cages because they're surrounded by a fence. I know that because I've been to Israel. And they are the most paranoid people that I've met.
Right.
So we have a situation that is upon us that we're going to have to do better to help ourselves, because none of these governments are going to come to save us. Matter of fact, they're trying to make our lives worse. We in the United States cannot get health care. People cannot get off the streets that we call homeless. Yet at the same time, we're financing illegals to come over here. And like the people in Chicago, the mayor want to give these illegals. They didn't vote for anything. So what's the point in voting when you got illegals who can get $9,000 for 6 months, to pay their rent? Nobody ever paid my rent.
Right.
But this is the behavior when people are getting paid to just be a figurehead. And we have to learn how to recognize this behavior and say enough is enough. That's what I'm ready to say. So if there was I'll just use a figure. If there was 1,000 young people who say, hey, what can I do? I'm ready to get started. It's like, okay, but you have to be educated. It's just like going to the military. You just can't go get a gun and go shoot. You got to go do basic training. You got to learn the very basics. We have all these subjects. We got all these wars going on. Most of us don't even know some of the history. We've listened to everybody else tell us stuff. So we do need education. But we have to also make connections with each other. Human connections. If you notice, none of these celebrities are talking about that unless they just talking. They're very quiet right now.
Yeah, it's almost
the
like
only thing they're talking about is the Jada Smith thing, and so you allow this woman who has some type of mental issue to become a distraction. That none of these people, none of the Gayle Kings, is her name Gayle Coon, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry. You don't hear none of these people. Even Whoopi Goldberg had made that mistake no more, because she said they were white people killing white people, which they were, and they took off the TV. What's that? 2 years ago, when she said the Jews and the Germans were fighting, and it was just white on white crime. Like they said, black on black crime. But the executives didn't like that. See how people can't stand truth.
Yeah.
And she didn't lie. It was white on white crime. That's what they call themselves when they come over here. The only time we know anybody, first of all, we don't know if a person is same sex or not unless they tell us sometime. Right. People are very discreet. We don't know if people are quote unquote Jewish unless they tell us. They walk around in white skin. That's all we know. You don't see any you don't see any Ethiopian Jews standing up there by Netanyahu. Nah, because they get treated just like us. Not just the Palestinians. All of them are jiggers over there.
I don't know why this thought popped in my head. It made me think about okay, so I watched the movie Bamboozled by Spike Lee. And
so which movie?
Bamboozled.
Oh, okay.
And I also had to pay attention to, like, in the premise of the movie, I had to pay attention to, like, okay, Mr. Dunwitty is Mr. Dunwitty is he's not a racist per se, but he's no. Let me scratch that. He is very racist, but it's one of those things where he dared Damon Wayans' character to say something if he had a problem with something. It was almost like, you got a problem, you keep it to yourself. And
kind of like how we live right now.
Yeah. And
pretty much how they're telling people in these workplaces, because I had somebody to say today, workers are getting very uncomfortable in these jobs because they can't really speak their own piece. And I had people at work talking about this lady, it was like no big thing. She told them she read some story and it was on 4chan. I'm going, okay, isn't that one of those white supremacist groups?
Yep.
And she said it like, this is just commonplace. And I get it. If that's where she get her news from, fine. But that tells us a lot. Hopefully it will start telling us that people are not as dumb as they pretend when they act like they don't know certain things happen. They're lying. I can just say that now. I can say that with assurance. They're lying. And they're going along with many of these things that people are doing because they agree with it. They've grown up with this. These so-called small town America. There are a bunch of people in these areas who have the tendencies like the man who was, I think he was a sheriff of one of those little towns in Oklahoma. And he wanted to know what happened to the days when he could just pretty much, kill black people if he wanted to.
Oh, yeah. That guy. Earl, you can't be saying that in front of the camera now.
Yeah, I'm going, okay.
Now I got to fire you, Earl.
Yeah.
You're messing up my money. And then you're putting bad on my name, Earl. You can't say that in public.
Well, because now they've learned to use, very distinct codes. So, but they are on code when they use all of these codes. So Black people are learning just to keep their mouth closed in all of these places because you can lose your job real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have to make our own connections so we can start making our own money. When I say making our own money, start working with each other. We haven't done that well enough around the world. We haven't. But anywho, that's all I got for tonight.
Yeah.
Hopefully they won't start blowing up the world this weekend. Because they're trying real hard. And the president had what was that thing they called it? He spoke to the nation last night, but he kept reeling and recycling that he's staying with Israel. We got that. We know that. We understand that, old man Joe. We understand that you stand with Israel, which is to say, wink and a nod, y'all can kill all the Palestinians, because it's pretty much what you're telling them. And then say anything about the church getting blown up. And when you blow up a church, you have no respect for people anyways.
Right.
And the Israeli defense has no respect because they have a tyrant. They have a tyrant. Oh, it's one of the last articles, and I'm done. It says Israeli anger at Netanyahu erupt at a hospital bedside. So imagine that. Your prime minister come to your bed and then you pretty much say, get him out of here before I throw him out. Okay. Because 67% of the citizens, and I'm talking Jewish people now, 67% of the citizens in Israel want Netanyahu gone like yesterday.
Yeah.
So this idea that these governments, and when I say governments, I'm not talking about the people, that includes the Palestinians and the Israelis. Everybody's asking for a ceasefire. Palestinians, Israelis sat in the capital. They didn't make that a big thing like they did January 6th, recycling.
Yeah.
Did you see where the Israelis were sitting in some type of place up in Washington? And they were simply telling, the government, stop using their names. In other words, stop saying the Israeli this. In other words, same way you talk about Hamas, use Netanyahu. Don't use the Israeli. Because the Israeli is saying they're not with that. They don't want to see. And we're talking about Orthodox, the people who wear the twisted hair, very Orthodox. You're talking about all of them. They do not want to see this. So this is a war that the so-called world leaders want. This is not what citizens want. This is not what Palestinians want. This is not what Israelis want. This is not what people across the world who are just regular people. This is not what we're asking. And that's what we have to come across and say. Stop letting the government make a fool out of us and have us fighting when you see these people. I'm sure some of these people who are sitting in that whatever that square up in DC, some of their people got killed over there in Israel. And I'm talking about some of their people who are probably Palestinian and some of the people who are Israelis. But what they're saying is, we're not going along with this. They should not be killing civilians who had nothing to do with the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the narrative that the people who are war thirsty, who like wars, that's why I said this is the behavior that come out of the Berbecker people. Everything about their existence has to do with war. The Nordic people, this is the behavior. They thrive on war. Nothing excites them more than seeing a bloody fight. It's sadistic. So Donald Trump, once again, and Vladimir Putin, or what's his name?
Putin.
Xi, the man from China, and they're not the only sickos. The King of England, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada, the pretty boy up there. All of them have the same sadistic mentality. So while they're talking about the sheikhs and all of these different people over in what they call the Middle East, this is the same behavior. It's going to have to be everyday common people. It really is. Because that's where the humanity comes in. Not with people who have decided their money is more important than people. We see that. We see United States government, and I know it's time for us to go. You see the United States government saying they can finance 2 wars, but they can't get the homeless off the street. Make that make sense.
The math is not mathing.
I mean, it's for me, it's just disturbing. So that's all I have, AJ.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I forgot to tell you. 91 listeners as of 2 days ago.
Well, we appreciate you guys listening. We're hoping that you continue to share our message, because the idea is, how do we start empowering you so you can empower others? So the more, it's not the regular, for me, it's not the regular, share, like, and subscribe. That's fine if that's what you guys want to do. My goal is, how do we empower each other so we can develop an underground railroad? If you don't understand that concept, look it up, and you will know that it's the power that was the engine for our survival in this regime we call the United States. And I'm out.
All right. All right, everybody. This is the end of the show. You guys be good to each other, and be careful in the Cocoa verse. All right. Yeah. Yeah. You guys be careful out there. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Okay.
And we will talk to you later.
Bye, AJ.
All right.